Hey there, folks. Hope you're having a fantastic weekend. Coming at you live with this week's stocks to watch for next week. Gonna go blow through these things real quick, overall. So we've got Greece. I don't know what the final outcome of that will be, but we've got some of that going on this weekend. We should have some clarity by Monday, and that could determine the direction that we're headed in next week. It's been choppy and look, we're still continuing to chop around a bit and consolidate. IBB looks weak, Nasdaq look a little weak, SMH looks terrible. So there's a lot of sectors that you got to be real cautious about. What I did find kind of interesting as I was doing my scans was that the oil and gas names, even though the USO and the XLE do not look particularly strong, a lot of the oil and gas names themselves look pretty hot. There's some good looking charts out there, and I think we need to keep an eye on that sector. The other thing too is if Greece does pull out, you could see a bounce in gold. I think you need to keep an eye on that. Maybe NUGT, UWTI for the oil if that gets moving, but. And then, of course, keep an eye on some of those short indexes, short ETFs. The TZA, or keep an eye on volatility, TVIX, and and that's it. So let's go ahead and blow through this list real quick. I went through a whole bunch of charts, and there really wasn't a whole lot out there I was crazy about. NES, though, this thing started to pop on Friday. I did try to catch this for a day trade. I didn't get my entry. Came right up into the 200-day moving average and looks as though it wants to test it. It tried to break through on Friday. Look for a continuation, maybe a red to green move in this NES next week. TWI, another sector that actually looked pretty good to me was the ag sector, agricultural sector. And this is one of the names that I thought looked pretty good. It's testing the 200 EMA. Had a nice little volume pop on Friday. Looking to try and take out that trend line and take out the 200 EMA. It's got an interesting look. It had a big pop, consolidated, pulled back, and now we're retesting that 200 EMA. I think it's worth paying attention to. May consider it for a day trade. Even might take it for a swing. STRL, construction name. This one reminds me of, and this is one I own in my swing portfolio, or I guess probably long-term portfolio. But I bought this back here down in the $5 and change range, and then it broke up above this 200-day moving average. I still have some lottos left in this bad boy, and I may be I may be getting out of it next week. We'll see. Uh, it came up and tested this trend line here, and then hasn't been able to follow through. Volume wasn't exactly really nice on Friday, but I am keeping an eye on this one as well. But if that sector seems to get hot, engineering and construction, this STRL could be fun to play as well. GTXI, look, this has had a very nice run. I wouldn't go chasing into this thing, but it does look as though it's consolidating a bit. And what I'm looking at here is let me take a look at the weekly on this thing real quick. Yeah, it's consolidating here. I wouldn't go chasing this thing. I'd let it consolidate a bit more. It might be one to watch for potential continuation, but it is a bit extended. MVIS, full disclosure, I do own this in my swing account. Picked it up around $3 or so, $3 and change. And I'm looking for it to take out this trend line. So, it keeps consolidating nicely over $3. If it can take out that trend line with any kind of conviction, I think you can get fun. RYAM. This one, I think this is a recent IPO. It was. Um, some lawsuits coming out on this one, but big volume on Friday, right? And it looks as though it wants to test this trend line. Trend line, maybe break out over these moving averages here. I think it's worth paying attention to. I'd be careful with it. I mean, there's not a lot of history here. Maybe if it can take out that trend line with any kind of conviction, it goes back up into that 1870 range. FTK, I had this for a swing and then I got rid of it and I basically got out flat. and I wish I would have held it because it did exactly what I thought it was going to do, is go up and test that 13 bucks. But now I want to see if we can consolidate a bit, right around these moving averages. Maybe pull back, maybe flag out a little bit before it tries to take out 13 again with conviction. That would be more of a swing than a day trade. SGYP, I continue to watch this name as it flags out after this big breakout. If 8 can hold, I think that maybe we can get another run in this SGYP. So it's worth keeping on the radar. REXX is one of those oil and gas names that continues to consolidate right around this 550 area. It is a bit overbought, so I wouldn't go chasing this thing, but I do find it interesting that it's testing that 550 area once again. I mean, it's got a lot of resistance above. Maybe it wants to go up and test the $6.20 area, but worth keeping an eye, and at least keep it in the back of your head, this REXX. RYI, this thing has been on my radar for quite a while. It's a real thin name, doesn't trade a lot of shares, but it's been consolidating for quite a while in this range. A break over 950 with some volume. I think this one is one you might consider taking for a quick play, but you got to see some real volume in it. Take it for a day trade. MITK. Hate this name. Hate this company. They're pop and floppers. They're serial diluters, but I have to say it looks pretty interesting testing this $4 holler, right? If we can break out over 4, I think this bad boy could potentially go up and test the $5 holler in that range somewhere. And it keeps, looking, it keeps tapping this area. So potential flat top, breakout, cup with handle, whatever you want to call it. It's got the look. Keep an eye on MITK, but be aware that that thing is a chronic pop and flopper. MXWL. So this had a nice little, look, we can't really pay too much attention to all these volume spikes on Friday because of the Russell rebalancing, but this thing popped up nicely, consolidated over the moving averages. Looks as though it wants to take out the 100-day moving average. It's got a gap to fill on the daily. I think it's worth paying attention to if it could take out that trend line with conviction. Maybe something to jump in on. MXWL. HOTR. I did own this for a swing. I got completely out on this big run here. Now I'm looking at it again. It's come back down. It's testing this trend line. The whole burger, mania, Shake Shack, Habit, all those places don't seem to be having the same kind of runs they were having before. But I want to see if this 200-day can hold as support. I want to see if this trend line can hold as support. I may look to start dipping my toe back into Hooter for a swing, but I haven't decided yet. I want to see how it holds up here. It may want to come back down and test this $2.26 range. This is another company that has done some shelf offerings and some dilution. So you got to be careful with HOTR as well. But if it got back down into this $2.26 range, I may start dipping my toe to rebuild the swing position as well. TXMD had a big old pop and it's been consolidating nicely. Looking for it to break out over 820 with conviction, but I don't know. The IBB does not look real healthy. This is a drug company, but this does look pretty good. I mean, it's worth keeping an eye on it. Maybe if it comes down and tests the $7.78 range, I don't know. It's a bit of ways from this trend line. I'm so on TXMD. If the thing does break out with some conviction, though, it could be fun for a day trade. IFON, super thin. Got to be careful. Doesn't trade a lot of shares. 48,000 shares. Looking for it to take out this trend line. Test the $3 holla. It might need a bit more time to consolidate. I mean, it broke over this trend line here. Looks like it's kind of flagging out. So maybe it gets some more in it. Merge, this the healthcare stuff that's going on. Merge is in that healthcare sector. It popped over this trend line. Actually, I mean, this is a bit extended. I mean, it got out of the upper Bollinger Band. It may need more time to consolidate. I like the fact that it's consolidating right below the $5 holla. Maybe, it might need another week or so. But I am watching it for a break over 5 with conviction. ISNS, another thin one, very thin name. Been consolidating after the big pop and pierce of the upper Bollinger Band, above all the moving averages. Just had the golden cross, right? And, well, that's the EMA. So I guess golden cross isn't quite there yet because that's a simple 50-day simple moving average, but it's heading in the right direction. And with some kind of news, I think this thing could really pop. Keep an eye on ISNS, MTG, mortgage insurance company. I mean, this thing looks pretty hot. And then we got to go back to the weekly on this one. I'm considering picking this thing up for a swing. This is a big area that it's kind of flirting around with here. This $12. If you can get above $12, I think it could really go. And it's probably more of a swing than it is or a long-term hold than it is a day trade. It's up a lot, right? It's overbought. I totally get it. Might want to look for a pullback in the name. Hold on one second. I got to get that. Okay, sorry about that, folks. I'm back with you here. MTG, where was I? So, this is probably more of a long-term hold. It is a bit extended, but it's a really controlled rise on this thing. And with the housing numbers that have been positive, I have to assume that this is probably doing fairly well. So, something to consider for a long-term hold or a swing. LXRX. Look, this company just did a reverse split, but what's kind of interesting about it, it's flirting with this $8 holla. It's flirting with these uh, moving averages, and it looks as though, I mean, it took out this trend line here. It might need more time to consolidate before it goes. It is starting to get a little overbought, but it is worth paying attention to. ACRX. Oh, so that was the weekly. Let's go back to the daily. Boom, boom, boom. ACRX, ugly. Well, again, can't really pay a lot of attention to these volume spikes, but this one's consolidating after this big pop, right? Consolidating right at the moving averages, right at the $4 holla, looking for a potential break over 4, maybe go up and test that 480 area once again. I think that is worth having on the radar. And then IPI had a big old spike. Remember, I said agriculture kind of looks interesting to me. Had a big old pop, basically right into the trend line and the $12 holla. Maybe it needs 2-3 days to consolidate a bit, and then we get another follow through. But IPI, I think, is also worth having on the radar. And that's it for my watch list for this week's folks. Folks. There's some drama going on in Greece. We'll see how it all plays out and see what happens next week. Also, I think there was some stuff that China did that could be interesting for the China market. Might get a little pop there. So anyway, be careful out there. Don't feel like you have to trade anything. One last thing. I did play a couple of things last week. Like I took a couple of IPOs on Friday. They both worked out fairly well. And I think you could keep an eye on some of those IPOs. What is it? GKOS and True and APPF and what was the other one? ALRM. I think you can keep an eye on those. Might get some follow through. Might be some action there. So that's it, folks. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will see you next week.